Welcome to Small Business 21st Century and this session of the Wealth Zone University. I'm your host, Don Maraney, and today we're not going to have a guest. We're going to do a straight talk about something that I think is really, really important. And today we're going to get kind of technical, not too technical, but kind of technical because this is a technical subject. We're talking about large enterprise business models. We're talking about how big business, does it well, and how we can take that and bring it down to our level of business, put that in place so that we too can do business and do it well. And again, we call that the large enterprise business model. And today we're going to kind of dig into separate topics. We're not going to talk much about the theory because if we do, then essentially the Wealth Zone University is going to be presenting a master's thesis, and we have no intention of trying to do that. But we are going to try and bring it down to our level, the small and medium-sized business level, where we can understand how important it is to have a business structure, a proven business structure that we follow and implement. So in prior segments, we've talked about success in business is possible for everyone who's in business. We just have to start off correctly, and we have to do things while we're in business that is sure, one, that we're building value into our business, that we're developing cash flow, and that we're looking to achieve that long-term goal of building wealth into our company. Yes, on a day-to-day basis, we're selling, we're servicing, we're moving the money around. The purpose of moving that money around long-term is to build wealth. And we contend that the large enterprise businesses have done that extremely well. We're going to talk about that today. And again, I'd like your feedback, your comments about what you think about our perception and our advocacy. But let's not get too technical, but let's get just a bit more technical than we do normally, okay? So to start out, our contention is that in order to do business well, there has to be a structure. There has to be a framework, a structure, a foundation, and then a framework in which we do that business. And then everything else once those two things are done, are fluid, but you have to start off. So let's take an analogy. Let's build a house. Let's assume for a second that our business is a house. The first thing that's done when you build a house is to put in the foundation. The foundation is the most important part. It's normally made out of cement. It could include steel. It could include wood. But the most important thing is the site is prepared for the foundation. The foundation is laid and made sure that it can support whatever's going to be built on top of it for decades, maybe even centuries for some buildings, okay? And so right now, let's think of the large enterprise business structure as our foundation. And notice I use the word structure rather than model because we're going to get into what I consider the definitions and the differences between those two things after we finish this example of building a house. And again, this house equates to your business, all right? After the foundation is set, laid, and solid, then the framing begins. The wood goes up. It might be steel in the large building, but the wood goes up, the steel goes up, and then the framework that the architect has drawn out and planned for the building, for the house, begins to take shape. Yeah, it's not filled in yet, but it's on top of the solid foundation, and it is rising so that within that framing, anything can be done that's going to facilitate the living for a house and the ongoing concern for a business. And then once the framing is done, that's when the particulars of the family, of the owner, that's when the particulars of the house start to get filled in. And that's when it becomes your house. That's when it becomes your dream. That's when it becomes your business. That's when it becomes your endeavor. So I'd like for us to think about a house when we start thinking about how our business is going to be built. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's the same basis. So let's dissect that house for a second and make it into a business. The foundation of our house is the large enterprise business structure. And the structure is the thing that everything else is built on. The framing of our house is the large enterprise building model. And the framing is everything that's going to hold whatever is going to satisfy me and you as a homeowner, or satisfy you and I as business owners. And then once that framing is done, then we start to put it together the way we want it. And that's the strategy and that's the planning, okay? And so let's go over this one. Foundation, structure, large enterprise business structure, proven way of doing business. Next to framing is the model. And again, the model is proven, but the model is flexible based upon what your plans are for your house. And then the planning itself is making sure that that house reflects who you are and how you want to live. And the business planning is exactly the same thing. Now, I think that if you look at your business from that perspective, you will kind of get a good feel and you'll be able to follow us as we proceed in this particular session of the Wealth Zone University, because everything else that we've talked about, making your business an economic asset, knowing the business of being in business, long-term goal of being in business is to build wealth, cash flow, value, visibility, everything that we've talked about, future thinking, all of those things start out with a structure. Now, understand, I'm not saying that you've got to take a structure and then your business has to do exactly the same thing that a large enterprise business is doing. That's a fallacy. We have to evolve. Everything evolves. What I'm saying is, instead of you going into business and developing your own structure based upon something that you feel is going to happen, put in a solid, proven structure. Save that novel idea. Save your wit. Save all of that for the model, or even better yet, save it for the planning. But you'll always have a solid basis for that business. And that, while it may evolve along with the model and the planning, that will always be a proven business model that you can build your business upon, the foundation. Okay? So let's talk about that. What is the large enterprise business model? Well, it's basically that whoever owns the business owns the wealth in the business. It's stockholders. Let's look at the stock market. I own stock in XYZ. When XYZ does well, my stock value increases. I'm the owner. And so the purpose of XYZ may be to sell something, but the responsibility of the board and the managers are to make sure that my stock value continues to rise. Now, how they do that, that's a little discussion we might have in the second segment, but bottom line is that the large enterprise business model is all about the people who own the business benefiting from the operation of that business. You with me? It's not the employees, it's not the managers, it's all about the people who provide the equity in the business, getting a return on that equity that is substantial. And that's where the wealth concept comes in. I own it, I build it. Whatever I build into it belongs to me. It's inside the company, of course, but I own the company. That's what it's about. And so that's simplistic. The model is once I have an understanding that the entire drive for my business is to build wealth for me, the owner, and the stockholders, then the model is, how is that done? How do we operate that business so that it builds that value for the stockholder? That's the model. So you get me? The foundation is stockholder value, 100%. We can call it shareholder value. As you research, you'll see these terms interchangeable, but for right now, let's call it stockholder value. So we do not interchange terms. And then the second part of that, and the stockholder value is the foundation, okay? The second part of that is the model, and that model is making sure that the company is operating profitably and will become a going concern so that it does increase that stockholder value. And the third part of that is planning. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to continue to grow? How are we going to continue to add value? How we are going to continue to be a going concern, and how we're going to get this company to last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and then have somebody buy it out for millions of bucks when we get finished. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Right now, we're going to take a break. See you. Hi, everyone. The objective of the Wealth Zone University is to change your mind about money, to change your financial future. Hi, I'm your host, Don Maraney. In the Wealth Zone University, my guests and I talk about a wide variety of business, financial, and other worldly topics. We are seeking to both educate and entertain you. We emphasize that the informations and discussions are my opinion, perspectives, and ideas, and those of our guests. We in no way intend to deliver or provide financial, tax, or business advice. You should consult with your tax, accounting, financial, insurance, and legal advisors regarding the impact, application, or pertinence of any topic or opinion that we share on the Wealth Zone University. Thank you for being a part of our audience, and please continue to communicate with us through email and Twitter, because this is your show. So let's start talking about our companies. Again, we're talking about the large enterprise business structure and model, but let's get it down to our company, okay? So in the large enterprise business structure, the concept of bringing value to the stockholders is called stockholder wealth maximization. Big word, big word. And trust me, since the 1900s, that concept has been litigated, has been debated, has been talked about and changed, and everything that you possibly can think about, so that it's a fluid concept. But again, the concept still is important. Stockholder wealth maximization. Basically, whatever happens to the company, their responsibility is to build the wealth for the people who provide the equity, who in corporations are stockholders. In an LLC, it's called members. You still own the equity. In a partnership, you're shareholders, you still own equity. So no matter what the name is, it's the people who own the enterprise that I'm talking about. In small businesses, it's normally just one person. It's me and you. And so think about that. Everything that happens to that company belongs to the two of us. Well, to the one of me and one of you, okay? So let's kind of make sure that we fully understand what we're saying when we're talking about it, okay? Because the foundation for our house and for our business, stockholder wealth maximization, okay? The framing for our house and for our business is called something else. It's called profit maximization, profitability maximization. One of those two frames, okay? And what does that mean? That means that in order to provide the value to the stockholder, that the company has to be operating profitably in order to provide the cash flow and the value that's going to then increase the stock price or the value in what I own. And so again, two things: stockholder maximization, the foundation, profitability maximization, the framework, and then, of course, planning how you're going to do that and the future thinking comes after that. But for the next couple of minutes, let's bring stockholder maximization down to the small business level. I call it company wealth maximization rather than stockholder wealth maximization, because some of us are sole proprietors, we don't have stock. Some of us are LLCs, we have units instead of stock. And so to make it more compatible to where small businesses are, let's talk about company wealth maximization. You know that it's a substitute in the big model for stockholder wealth maximization. And so what is a small and medium-sized business? Well, quickly, if you look online, look at research, there are 10 definitions, and they're all different. So for the sake of our discussion, let's use the Small Business Administration definition, which is an independent entity with 100 or less employees, okay? The international definition of small business enterprise is less than 500 employees and less than 10 million. And so, you know, let's stay within that range, okay? Small and medium-sized businesses, which we call SMBs, okay? That's an acronym, are less than 100 employees and less than 10 million. Let's use that basis as a discussion, okay? Large enterprise businesses are gigantic. Instead of using numbers, just think about GM, just think about all of those gigantic companies that have been around for a very long time, that are still doing well, and all those new companies that have come out and their stock on the stock market is just rising and going crazy, okay? That's the model that we want to bring down to our companies in this company wealth maximization definition, all right? So understand this. When you start your business, you're the stockholder. It's your responsibility then to build that business to the point where you have some semblance of a large enterprise business structure, which is stockholders own it. The stockholders select the board to protect their interest. The board hires management to run the operation. Management is responsible for the profitability maximization. The board is responsible to the stockholders for the stockholder maximization. And so you can see that inside of this company, there are foundation, stockholder maximization, there's framework, profitability maximization. In our smaller company, it's all encompassed in the company wealth maximization combined definition that we've been talking about, okay? And so how do you take that large enterprise business and adapt it to your small company? Well, it's easy. First, you have to lay the foundation. And that foundation is, I'm the owner, I don't have a board, so I should surround myself with smart people who know things that I don't know. Not a board, but advisors, peers, mentors, people who can bring value and different perspectives to your running your small business. You can't do it alone. And so at the first level, part of your foundation has to be surrounding yourself with people who can help you make good decisions. And you listening to them and showing them that the information that they're sharing with you has import. I'm not telling you that you have to do everything that someone tells you. I'm just telling you that if you have good advice, act on it. The worst thing can happen is I'm your advisor and I'm advising you and you never do anything. I mean, then why keep going, all right? After you start leveraging, and leveraging in my mind is when you start building in employees and staff so that your time is now being maximized, and because other people are doing things that you used to do, when you start bringing in employees and leveraging and you have a management structure, that's when you should actually then begin to have a board. Again, you're the stockholder foundation. the board now needs to be people who are not in your company, who are more than advisors. They're still advisors, but they're more than advisors. They are people who have an interest in making sure that your company continues to grow. They're not stockholders, but they are people who are more than just casual advisors, all right? And then you are moving up in management. You might be the top manager, president. You might be the top executive, which we're all striving to become, chief executive officer. And so let me stop right here and just say, when you actually develop a board and you're the CEO, that CEO at the small company wealth maximization level, that CEO should also be chairperson or president of the board, okay? And this is important. In the large enterprise business structure, the board is separate from management. The CEO is hired by the board and works for the board and reports to the board. And the board is elected by the stockholders, works for the stockholders, and reports to the stockholders. In the small company maximization, the two top positions, the board top position, whether it's called president or chairperson, and the management top position, which is CEO, that person at the top of those two entities needs to be the same person. In the large enterprise business, it absolutely has to be different people because of the scope. In the small business, it absolutely has to be the same person because remember, this is still your company. This is still your dream. The board is bringing perspectives to you that you may not have and may not be able to see, but you still need to be able to make sure that everything that's running on the board that's seeking to bring value to your stock and everything that's running in the operational side, which is seeking to bring profitability to your company, you have to make sure that those things are always in sync. And so that's a difference between the large enterprise business model, stockholder wealth maximization, and what we're calling company wealth maximization, which is for SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses. That the top person on the board side should also be the top person on the management side, and vice versa. The top person on the management side needs to be the top person on the board side. That's extremely important. And so let's recap, okay, so that we're all on the same page. Our whole objective of being in business long-term is to build wealth. And if you remember from other segments, the things that are required in the business to build wealth are, right, cash, value, one more, and for it to become an economic asset. That's right, you guys remember that extremely well. And so all of this that we're talking about is to make sure that those things happen. Positive cash flow, value, and that it becomes an economic asset. And that's exactly what large businesses do. They're just more complicated than we need to be at our level. At our level, it's my business. My responsibility is to make sure that the board brings advice to me that absolutely helps me enhance my value. And it's my responsibility that the management side runs an operation that becomes a going concern, that is profitable and provides the positive cash flow, and that it becomes an economic asset. And all of that contributes to my ability to make my company an economic asset that's going to build wealth long term. So again, it's how you start out. Don't just start your business. And even if you've been in business for a while, please rethink what we've been talking about today. You have to have a structure. And I contend that if you think about your business like we talked about building a house, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. You have to have a foundation. You have to have a structure. That structure should be a proven structure. That foundation should be cement. It should be steel. It should be wood. Maybe someone else might try and build a foundation without it, but I don't recommend it. So company wealth maximization, please. We've got a free ebook called The Large Enterprise Business Model. If you send us an email, seated in the lower third, we'll share that ebook with you. But please, do your own research on it. And again, remember, at our level, it's called company wealth maximization. At the larger level, it's called stockholder wealth maximization. But bottom line is, we start the business. Our goal for the next 20 years is to build wealth in it, and that wealth belongs to us. And that should be the one thing that you take away from this discussion, that your reason for being in business is to become wealthy. I'll see you at the bank. Bye.